It all started so simply, with a question I thought was innocent, a question I assumed any partner would answer truthfully. Have you and Ashlyn ever hooked up? It was the question I had been dancing around for months, the question I knew deep down I had to ask, despite my fears of what the answer would be. But I never expected it to spiral out of control the way it did. Xavier's response was explosive. He didn't just get defensive, he turned hostile. He shut me out completely, then ghosted me. But it wasn't until Ashlyn herself confessed the truth that everything came crashing down. They had been secret friends with benefits for years. I thought I knew Xavier. I thought I saw a future with him, but the man I thought I loved wasn't the person he seemed to be. I never thought I'd find myself in this position, questioning my worth, doubting everything I'd believed about love, and now I'm left trying to piece together the truth from all the lies. I never imagined that the woman I would be battling wasn't some other girlfriend. No, it was a friend who had been in his life long before me. Ashlyn, the one person who, apparently, had been able to control him better than I ever could. My boyfriend Xavier and his best friend Ashlyn. What I thought was a harmless friendship turned into the biggest betrayal of my life. I'm 24 years old, and for most of my life, I believed in love the way they show it in movies. I was never one for high school romance or fleeting crushes. I wanted something real, something lasting. I met Xavier a little over a year ago, and it felt like it was meant to be. He was everything I wanted, successful, grounded, and caring. At 27, Xavier had a stable job in construction management, was well put together, and was genuinely kind. When we started dating, he seemed perfect. We clicked from the first date. We both loved good food, long conversations, and a quiet, simple life. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Everything seemed right, even when I met Ashlyn for the first time. We were at a dinner with some of Xavier's college friends at an Italian restaurant downtown. Ashlyn had been a part of Xavier's life since college, and her presence loomed like an invisible thread tying them together. When Xavier introduced us, she looked me up and down in a way that left me uneasy, but I brushed it off. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, but something about her smile didn't sit right with me, something in her eyes that I couldn't quite place. The rest of the night was fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling. As we spent more time together, I realized Ashlyn was always there, hovering at the edges of their friendship like she had some claim on him. They had this dynamic, this unspoken bond that I couldn't quite figure out. Ashlyn was athletic, tall, and confident, with sharp green eyes that drew people's attention. She was everything I wasn't, and that thought alone made me uncomfortable. I'm shorter, built differently, and I've always struggled with self-doubt when it comes to my appearance. But Xavier made me feel like none of that mattered, at least not when I was with him. The tension between Ashlyn and me grew as I noticed the little things, the way she touched Xavier casually, how she had this uncanny ability to read him, to get under his skin in a way I couldn't. I never saw her flirt, but the boundaries seemed non-existent. She'd brush his shirt when there was nothing on it, fix his jacket without a second thought. At times, it felt like she could get closer to him than I could, and it made my stomach churn. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was nothing. After all, Xavier had assured me time and time again that Ashlyn was just a good friend, a sister figure, someone who had been there for him in the roughest moments of his life. But the red flags were there, and they only grew brighter with time. One night, at a birthday party for one of their mutual friends, I saw something that made everything click into place. Ashlyn came up behind Xavier, wrapping her arms around his waist, pulling him into a hug that lasted too long. She whispered something in his ear, and I saw him laugh, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. There was something there, something shared between them that didn't feel right. I watched, feeling the weight of my suspicions pressing down on me, but I said nothing. I didn't want to be that girlfriend, the one who made accusations without evidence. Then there were the other times, the subtle things, how Ashlyn would always act like the cute one when she wanted something. If she needed something from Xavier, she'd playfully tug at his sleeve or pout until he gave in. It worked every time. Xavier, who was stubborn with everyone else, was putty in her hands. It made me feel small, insignificant, like I wasn't the one who mattered. Xavier was supposed to be my partner, but when it came to Ashlyn, it was like she had first dibs on him. I tried to talk to him about it, hoping he would see what I was seeing, but when I did, it only made things worse. Xavier got defensive, explaining that Ashlyn was important to him, like family. That's when I started to question whether my place in his life meant as much as I thought. But despite all the tension, I tried to believe him, tried to trust him. Still, the nagging feeling didn't go away. It started as small, almost imperceptible moments, but the cracks in our relationship began to show. At first, it was easy to dismiss. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe I was jealous. But the more I watched Xavier and Ashlyn together, the more uncomfortable I became with the boundaries they ignored. It wasn't just physical touch, although that bothered me. It was the way Xavier treated Ashlyn differently than anyone else in his life. The way she could control him with a smile or a glance. And it wasn't just me who noticed. Their mutual friends started to comment on it too, though in more casual, offhand ways. One night, Josh, one of Xavier's friends, pulled me aside. He had seen the unease on my face after one of Xavier and Ashlyn's interactions. He told me, "It's always been like that with them. Ashlyn's the only one who can get through to Xavier when he's being hard-headed." That hit me hard. I had never wanted to be the jealous girlfriend, but Josh's words confirmed everything I had been feeling. Xavier and Ashlyn shared something I couldn't touch, something I wasn't a part of. And it wasn't just a friendship, it was a bond built over years, one that didn't seem to have any room for me. Still, I tried to ignore it, convinced that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But the signs were everywhere. During a walk through the park one day, Ashlyn draped her cardigan over Xavier's shoulders without asking, even though he had his own jacket with him. He laughed it off, joking about how cute she was for thinking of him. But it wasn't cute, it was intimate. It was something a girlfriend might do, not just a friend. And I was left standing there, small and unseen, feeling like I didn't belong in their little world. There was another instance at a bar, one I'll never forget. Xavier had been drinking, but he wasn't drunk, just buzzed enough to get a little more irritable than usual. A group of guys started talking trash, and before I could stop him, Xavier was already in their faces, challenging them. I grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away, but he shook me off, pushing past both me and the bartender to confront the guys. The situation was escalating fast, and I was terrified it was going to get physical. And then Ashlyn walked in. She didn't try to calm him down. She didn't try to reason with him. No, she marched straight over, yelling his name, calling him stupid in front of everyone. And then she did something I didn't expect. She physically grabbed him by his shirt and dragged him away. I stood there, frozen, watching her pull him into a corner, speaking with him like they were the only two people in the room. It was such a simple act, but it tore me apart. I had tried to intervene. I had tried to be the one to protect him, to stop him from making a scene. But Ashlyn, she didn't just intervene. She controlled him, guided him away with a calm certainty that made my blood run cold. Later, when I confronted Xavier about it, he shrugged it off. "Ashlyn talked sense into me," he said. But how was it that only Ashlyn could talk sense into him? Why wasn't I enough? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that I was being pushed out of the picture by someone who had been in Xavier's life long before I had. The more I saw them together, the more I started to wonder if I was just another girl in a long line of women who had never really mattered. Xavier always said Ashlyn was just a friend, but the way he defended her, the way he allowed her to cross boundaries with him, could I really believe him? There was only one way to find out. I had to confront Xavier about it. I couldn't live with this gnawing doubt any longer. It happened one evening after work. I had been turning the thoughts over and over in my mind, the unease gnawing at me until I couldn't bear it any longer. I needed answers. I needed to know if I was just being paranoid or if my instincts were right. I asked Xavier to come over to my apartment after his shift, hoping to finally get some clarity. When he walked in, there was that familiar smile, the kind he always gave me when he wanted to reassure me, to make me feel like everything was okay. But tonight, it wasn't the same. I could see it in his eyes. There was a tension there, something he wasn't saying. He knew this conversation was coming. I didn't waste any time. I had been holding this in for far too long. I looked at him, and with all the courage I could muster, I asked, "Xavier, are you and Ashlyn more than just friends?" His expression faltered for a split second, but then it was back to that calm mask he always wore. He crossed his arms, shifting uncomfortably. "What's this about?" he asked, avoiding my gaze. I leaned in, my heart pounding in my chest. "I need to know, Xavier. Have you and Ashlyn ever been more than friends? Have you ever hooked up?" Don't lie to me. Just tell me the truth." The room seemed to shrink as his eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Anger, defensiveness, guilt? Before he could say anything, I pressed further. "You've always been so defensive about her, Xavier. The touching, the history, the way she can control you, it doesn't sit right with me. It's like you don't even see it." I could see his jaw tightening, his fists clenching. But instead of answering me, instead of being open, he got hostile. "You've been with me for less than a year. You have no right to ask me about my past like this." His voice rose, sharp and defensive. He stormed over to the wall, crossing his arms in a way that made it clear this conversation was over. He looked at me like I had just accused him of the worst thing he could imagine. I was taken aback by his reaction. It wasn't just anger, it was a complete shutdown, a refusal to even engage in what I thought was a reasonable question. He was shutting me out, pushing me away with words that stung harder than anything he had ever said before. Then, without another word, he grabbed his keys and walked out of the apartment, leaving me standing there, stunned and shaking. The door slammed behind him, and I was left in the silence, with my thoughts spinning out of control. I texted him later that night, hoping for a response. I tried to call him twice, but both times it went straight to voicemail. My heart ached as I stared at my phone, hoping for an answer, a glimpse of the Xavier I thought I knew. But there was nothing. No word, no apology, no explanation. It was the silence that broke me. His refusal to even talk about it felt like a betrayal in itself. He had ghosted me, left me with more questions than answers. And in that silence, I realized something I hadn't fully grasped before. This wasn't just about Ashlyn. This was about him, the way he refused to be honest with me, the way he wouldn't open up, the way he always chose to protect her instead of trusting me. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next day, I messaged Ashlyn directly. I asked her to meet me for coffee. I didn't expect a response, but within 10 minutes she replied. "Sure," she said. "Let's meet at the cafe near my office." When I arrived, my hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I had no idea what she would say, what I would hear, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the dark. Ashlyn walked up, her expression unreadable, and sat across from me. She didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "What is this about?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I need to know the truth about you and Xavier. Is there anything going on between you two? Did something happen in the past that I need to know about? He's been avoiding my questions, and I deserve answers." Ashlyn paused, her gaze cold for a moment. Then, with a sigh, she said, "I'll tell you everything, but you're not going to like it." She leaned back in her chair, and with those words, everything began to unravel. Ashlyn's words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I leaned forward, my hands trembling in my lap, bracing myself for the truth I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. I had spent months questioning the dynamics between her and Xavier, wondering if my suspicions were just paranoia or if there was something darker lurking beneath the surface. And now Ashlyn, of all people, was about to confirm my worst fears. She looked at me, her sharp green eyes piercing through me, and then she finally spoke. "Xavier and I..." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "We've had something going on for years. It was never really a relationship, but it wasn't just a friendship either." Her words hit me like a wave, but I forced myself to stay still, to keep my composure, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "We were friends with benefits in college," she continued, her voice steady, almost cold. "Xavier and I were close, and it started with one night, just a kiss, and it turned into something that lasted for years. After college, it wasn't over. We'd still hook up when he needed to, when things weren't working with other women. I'm not proud of it, but that's the truth." The room seemed to tilt as I processed her words. I had suspected something like this, but hearing it from her was a different kind of gut punch. All this time, I had been made to feel like I was overreacting, like I was imagining things. But now it was clear. Xavier had been keeping a part of himself, a part of his past, hidden from me, and I had been foolish enough to ignore the warning signs. Ashlyn kept talking, her voice more matter-of-fact now. "He never really dated anyone seriously, not after you. I know he said he wanted to, but the truth is, he's never really been able to commit to anyone, not to you, not to me, and certainly not to anyone before us. And when I found out about you, when you came into the picture, it was hard, but I respected it. I thought maybe he'd finally pick someone else." She paused, watching me for my reaction. I was silent, but my mind was racing. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe Xavier had lied to me, that he had kept me in the dark while still holding on to Ashlyn, even if it wasn't official. Ashlyn, as if sensing my struggle, leaned in slightly. "But let me tell you this," she said quietly. "You're better off without him. I've waited for years for him to change, for him to choose me, but he never did, and he won't. You deserve better than someone who can't even be honest with you about something this simple." Her words were a bitter pill, but they rang true. I had spent months doubting myself, questioning if I was overreacting, but now it was all clear. Xavier wasn't the man I thought he was. He wasn't the man I had built him up to be in my mind. He was still tangled up in his past, still emotionally unavailable, and I had been blind to it. "I think you should leave him," Ashlyn said, her voice softer now, almost apologetic. "Because he won't change. Not for you, not for anyone." Her words were like a mirror, showing me the truth I had been avoiding. For the first time, I realized how much I had let myself ignore. The way Xavier had always put up walls, the way he couldn't set boundaries with Ashlyn, the way he had shut me down every time I asked him to be honest with me. It wasn't just a simple misunderstanding or a mistake. It was a pattern that I had missed, or maybe refused to see, because I didn't want to face the truth. I sat there, numb, trying to process everything Ashlyn had just laid out in front of me. My mind was reeling with the implications of it all. Xavier had betrayed me, but more than that, he had lied to me for months, keeping this secret relationship with Ashlyn while pretending to be committed to me. I had trusted him, had given him my heart, and he had treated it like it was disposable. After a long silence, I finally spoke, my voice shaky but determined. "Thank you for telling me the truth. I don't know if I can forgive either of you for this, but I'm glad I know. I needed to hear it." Ashlyn nodded, standing up to leave. "I'm sorry for all of this. I really am. I never meant to hurt you. But you're right. He's not the guy you think he is." And with that, she left, leaving me sitting there alone, the weight of the truth settling over me like a heavy blanket. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw my phone against the wall in frustration. But I didn't. I just sat there, feeling an overwhelming sense of loss, not just for Xavier, but for the person I thought I knew, for the future I had imagined with him. It was all gone. I couldn't stay with him anymore, not after what I knew, but it didn't make it any easier to let go. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, shock, betrayal, and a heavy sadness I couldn't shake. I had gotten the truth from Ashlyn, but the weight of it wasn't something I could just walk away from. I had to face Xavier, to confront him. But the thought of doing so made my chest tighten with dread. He had already shut me out once, and now I knew the full extent of his dishonesty. What would I even say to him? How could I ever trust him again? That night, after my meeting with Ashlyn, I waited for Xavier to reach out. I waited for some kind of explanation, some sign that he wanted to make this right. But there was nothing. No text, no call. He didn't even respond to my message asking if we could talk. And the silence from him was the loudest thing of all. By the third day of silence, I knew I couldn't just wait anymore. I had to face him. I needed closure, or at least a chance to say what I needed to say. I drove to his apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. Every thought in my head was a storm. Anger, heartbreak, confusion, all mixed together. But the one thing that stood out above all was my need for truth. I had to hear it from him. When I knocked on the door, it felt like I was about to walk into a war zone. Xavier opened the door, his face immediately darkening when he saw me. His posture was defensive, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. The man I thought I knew was standing before me, but this version of him felt like a stranger. "What do you want?" His voice was cold, distant. I didn't even flinch. "I want the truth, Xavier," I said, my voice trembling, but resolute. "All of it. I already know about you and Ashlyn. I know about the years of lies and the secrets you've kept from me." His eyes flickered briefly, but he quickly recovered, his expression turning even colder. "You don't know anything," he spat, stepping back and crossing his arms tighter. "I didn't want to tell you because it wasn't your business. It was before you, and it doesn't mean anything now." "Before me?" I could feel my voice rising. "You lied to me. You lied about your past with her. You lied about the boundaries, and now you're telling me it doesn't mean anything? Do you even hear yourself? Xavier took a step back, running a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. It's not like that, okay? Ashlyn and I. He stopped himself and looked at me, almost like he was trying to figure out where to begin. I never meant to hurt you. I care about you, but she's been in my life longer than you've been. I didn't know how to explain everything to you without making it worse. I shook my head in disbelief. You didn't know how, you just kept lying, Xavier. You let me believe everything was fine while you were still holding on to her. How do you think that makes me feel? He stayed silent for a moment, his lips pressed into a thin line as if weighing his words carefully. Then he sighed, rubbing his face in frustration. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose you, but I didn't know how to set boundaries with her. She's always been there, and maybe it's my fault, but I never thought it would get this bad. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was still justifying his actions, still trying to downplay everything he had done. You never thought it would get this bad? I repeated, the hurt in my voice cutting through the tension between us. You had an emotional affair with her for years, and you think that's not going to affect our relationship? You think I'm just supposed to forgive you for keeping this from me? Xavier's face hardened. I didn't want to hurt you, okay? I was trying to keep everything together. I didn't know how to cut her out of my life without losing everything else. Everything else? The words stung. You mean me? You mean us? Because it sure feels like I've been nothing more than an afterthought in your life. You were never fully with me, Xavier, not while she was still in the picture like that. I felt the weight of his gaze on me, but I didn't back down. The anger was bubbling up inside me, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. You can't have both, Xavier. You can't keep her as your emotional safety net while being with me. That's not how this works. My voice broke as I said it, but I knew I had to get it out. You need to make a choice, and you've already made it. By lying, by shutting me out. I can't do this anymore. He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand, stopping him. No, you had your chance. You showed me who you are, and I don't want to keep fighting for something that's never been real. This is over. The words stung like acid, but I knew it was the right thing. I had to walk away, even if it hurt, even if it felt like a part of me was being torn out of my chest. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving Xavier standing in the doorway, his face a mixture of shock and something else, regret, maybe, or just the realization that he had lost me for good. The days after I ended things with Xavier felt like a blur, but in the worst possible way. I was numb, going through the motions, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying the conversation over and over, each word cutting deeper with every repetition. I had told myself that walking away was the right choice, but the ache in my chest said otherwise. I missed him. I missed the version of him I had believed in, the man who had promised me a future that now felt like a cruel illusion. It didn't help that everywhere I went, I was reminded of him. The apartment that used to feel like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. The sofa where we spent lazy weekends together, the kitchen where we cooked meals side by side, it all echoed with his absence. Even the smallest things, like the smell of his cologne or hearing a song we used to play on repeat, made my heart ache in ways I hadn't expected. I had thought I was strong enough to walk away, but in the silence that followed, I realized how much I had invested in him, in us. I kept telling myself that it was for the best. I had to let go of someone who wasn't truly ready to commit, someone who still had ties to his past that I couldn't compete with. But the truth was harder to face. I felt like I had been betrayed by the person I trusted most. And even worse, I had been blind to the red flags for so long. My mind kept asking the same question. How could I have not seen it? How could I have ignored all the signs that Xavier wasn't the man I thought he was? And then there was Ashlyn. She had been a part of this all along, in ways I hadn't even realized. When I thought about her confession, about their secret history, the years of emotional manipulation, it made me sick. She wasn't just some friend who had crossed a boundary. She was a constant presence in Xavier's life, one he had never fully let go of. I couldn't help but wonder if he had never really chosen me, not in the way I thought he had. Maybe I had always been second to Ashlyn, just another distraction until she decided she was done playing her part. I wasn't just losing Xavier. I was losing the fantasy I had built of our future together, the future I had poured my heart into. I tried to distract myself. I buried myself in work, spending long hours at the office, throwing myself into projects just to keep my mind from spiraling. But even that didn't help. I couldn't escape the weight of everything I had lost, and worst of all, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed. I had let myself be deceived for too long. I had ignored my instincts, let myself be blinded by love and hope, and now it felt like I was paying the price. The loneliness was suffocating. I kept replaying the moments we shared, the good ones, and trying to convince myself that I had made the right decision. But each time, doubt crept in. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe Xavier wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I could have forgiven him, just like I had with so many other things. But every time I thought about giving in, about texting him or calling him, the memory of his anger, his defensiveness, stopped me cold. He had shut me out when I needed him most. He had chosen Ashlyn over me, and that truth was the hardest thing to swallow. I spent the first week after the breakup trying to convince myself that I was okay, that I was healing. But the more I tried to distract myself, the more the pain grew. It felt like I was suffocating, like I was constantly fighting to breathe. I wasn't okay. I wasn't even close to being okay. And the worst part was that I didn't know how to fix it. How do you let go of someone who was supposed to be your future? How do you move on when everything you believed in has shattered? I cried. A lot. In private. In the quiet moments when no one was around to see the broken pieces of myself I had to pick up. It was humbling. This vulnerability I had never shown anyone before. I hadn't wanted to admit how deeply I had loved him, how deeply I had believed in our future. But I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. I didn't want to go out, didn't want to talk to anyone. I pushed my friends away, telling them I needed time, even though I knew I was isolating myself. I didn't want to face their pity or their well-meaning advice. They didn't understand. No one could understand the weight of the betrayal unless they had been through it themselves. I was lost, not just in my relationship with Xavier, but in who I was without him. I had defined so much of my life by our future together, by what I thought we could build. And now that it was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. It felt like everything I had been working towards, everything I had built, had been swept away in an instant. It was a dark time, the lowest point of this entire mess, but I knew deep down that this was a turning point. This was the moment I had to rebuild from. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave me something to hold on to. This was the moment I would reclaim myself. I just didn't know yet how long it would take or what the next step would be. It felt like the darkest point in my life, the kind of pain that seeps into your bones and weighs you down with every step you take. The first few days after the breakup were a blur of loneliness and self-doubt. I couldn't escape the constant swirl of emotions that plagued me: betrayal, anger, sadness, and regret. It was as though everything I thought I knew about love had been turned inside out. I wasn't just mourning Xavier, I was mourning the future I had imagined, the life we were supposed to build together. But somewhere in the middle of the pain, something started to shift. It wasn't an immediate change, not a single moment of clarity that snapped me out of the fog. It was gradual, like a seed planted deep inside me that began to grow, pushing its way through the cracks. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, I came across a message from Deanie, my best friend. She had been a rock through all of this, checking in on me despite my repeated pleas to be left alone. I opened her text, half expecting her to offer more of the same advice she had been giving since the breakup. "Hey, I know you're not ready for this, but I just want you to know you're stronger than you think. This doesn't define you. You deserve someone who chooses you, someone who doesn't have a past with another woman hanging over him." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but not in the way I expected. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Hope. Hope that I could get past this. Hope that there was life after Xavier, after this betrayal. I realized that she was right. I didn't have to carry this weight forever. I didn't have to let Xavier's mistakes define who I was. In that moment, I understood that I had a choice, an actual choice. I could let the pain consume me, let it break me down until I was unrecognizable, or I could pick myself up and rebuild. It wasn't about forgiving Xavier, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was about choosing me, about reclaiming my power and deciding that I was worthy of a love that was honest, untainted by the ghosts of the past. I had given so much of myself to someone who couldn't give me the same in return, and that wasn't my fault. It was his. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to waste any more time obsessing over Xavier, over Ashlyn, or over what could have been. I was going to move forward, even if it meant doing it alone. It was time to heal, to rebuild, to remember who I was before any of this had happened. I started small. I reached out to my sister Ruth and finally made plans to see her, something I had been avoiding for weeks. I began exercising again, something I had always enjoyed but had neglected while I was wrapped up in the chaos of my relationship. I even signed up for a weekend art class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the courage to try. Each step felt like progress. Each small action, no matter how insignificant it seemed, reminded me that I could still find joy, that I could still build a life outside of the pain, and with every passing day, I felt stronger. It wasn't easy, not by any means. There were nights when I would lie in bed, my mind drifting back to Xavier, to the way things used to be, and I would feel the familiar ache in my chest. But I refused to let those moments take control. I kept moving forward, slowly but surely, building my life back up piece by piece. Then, one afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Ashlyn. At first, I thought about ignoring it, about blocking her and pretending I hadn't seen it, but something inside me told me to open it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she wrote. I never meant for any of this to hurt you. I should have been honest with you from the start. I hope you can find peace. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her everything she had done wrong, to accuse her of causing all this pain, but I didn't. Instead, I just replied, I appreciate the apology. I'm moving on, though. It's time for me to let go of this chapter. That was it. I didn't need anything more from her. Her apology didn't change the fact that she had been a part of the betrayal, that she had helped keep me in the dark. But I didn't need her to apologize for me to move forward. I had already made the decision to let go. As I hit send on the message, I felt something shift inside me. It was the final piece of the puzzle. I wasn't going to keep looking back. I wasn't going to let their mistakes define my future. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. The fallout came like a wave, but it wasn't nearly as dramatic as I'd imagined. In the days following the breakup, I had braced myself for an emotional storm. Xavier's anger, Ashlyn's retaliation, or even some dramatic public confrontation. But what I got instead was something quieter, a steady hum of discomfort that lingered in the air, making everything feel off-kilter. The first blow came when I ran into one of Xavier's friends, Josh, at the grocery store. I had seen him around a few times before, always in the background, one of those people who wasn't in the inner circle but still a regular part of the friend group. He caught my eye as I turned the corner by the produce aisle, and for a moment I hesitated, wondering if he had heard about the breakup yet. Hey, Josh said, his voice kind, but with a layer of awkwardness. How are you holding up? I forced a smile, feeling the weight of the situation sink in. I'm doing okay, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's been rough, but I'm getting through it. Josh nodded, his gaze flickering slightly. I heard about everything that went down with Xavier, he said, and I could hear the sympathy in his tone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know it must have been tough. His words, while kind, felt hollow. It wasn't the apology I needed. It wasn't from Xavier or Ashlyn, but it was a reminder that this was all out in the open now, and there was no going back. People were talking. People were picking sides. I'm fine, I said, a little too quickly. It's just been a lot to process. Josh hesitated, then dropped his voice lower. I'm not sure what's going on with Xavier, but I just wanted to let you know. He and Ashlyn, they're together now. I blinked, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under me. It wasn't news, not really, but hearing it from someone else felt different. It was confirmation, in a way, that everything I had suspected was true, that the history between Xavier and Ashlyn had never really been put to rest, and now they were trying to make something new out of it. I forced a smile again, though it felt like the muscles in my face were betraying me. Thanks for letting me know, but it's not really my concern anymore, is it? Josh seemed uncomfortable, shifting on his feet. Yeah, I guess not. Anyway, take care of yourself. Let me know if you need anything. I watched him walk away, but the weight of his words settled in my chest. I didn't need anyone to tell me what had happened between them. The truth had been out there all along. But hearing it confirmed, hearing it from someone who had been on the sidelines, felt like a final slap in the face. It wasn't just that they were together now. It was that they had been together all along, in one way or another, and I had been the fool in the middle of it. The next few days, everything felt different. Work was quiet. I could feel the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, as if people were walking on eggshells around me. I had expected to feel angry, to want to confront Xavier, to scream at him for the lies, for everything he had taken from me. But instead, I felt nothing, just numb. Then, one afternoon, I was in the break room at work, trying to focus on something other than the mess that had become my life. I overheard a conversation between Lisa and Michelle, two of Xavier's other friends. They weren't speaking to me directly, but their words cut through the space like a knife. "I don't get it," Lisa said. "I mean, I know they were going through something, but Xavier and Ashlyn? It just feels like it was inevitable." Michelle chimed in, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "It was always like that. I think we all saw it coming. He's always been stuck on her. Honestly, I don't know why he bothered with anyone else." The words were like poison, slowly seeping into my veins. I couldn't let them see the effect it was having on me, so I kept my head down, pretending to focus on my phone. But inside, something snapped. They had never taken me seriously. None of them had. I wasn't the one who mattered. I had been the distraction, the easy choice, the person who could fit into the space between Ashlyn and Xavier while he figured out his feelings. I wasn't stupid. I knew the truth. I had been part of a game that I never even knew I was playing. But now, it didn't matter. What hurt the most wasn't their whispers, wasn't the confirmation that Xavier and Ashlyn were a thing again. It was the realization that I had given everything to someone who never truly saw me, never truly valued me the way I had valued him. And just like that, the anger started to fade. The humiliation, the betrayal, it was all there, but now it was something I could control. I wasn't going to let them win, not by making me feel small, not by making me doubt myself. I had already lost enough. That night, I took another step forward. I deleted the last photos I had of Xavier and me together. I blocked him on social media, finally cutting off that last thread that had kept me tied to him. It wasn't for him, it wasn't to punish him, it was for me, to prove that I was done. I didn't need to keep clinging to the ghost of someone who had never truly been mine. The truth was hard to swallow, but it was also freeing. I wasn't going to let this man and his tangled past define me anymore. The fallout, the whispers, the quiet shame, they didn't have power over me. I had power over me. And the next step was mine to choose. The days began to stretch on, but with each passing one, I felt the weight of the past start to lift. I wasn't free yet. There were still moments when I found myself thinking about Xavier, wondering what he was doing, if Ashlyn had finally gotten what she wanted. But those moments were fewer now. It was like I was slowly getting back to myself, learning what it felt like to live for me, without constantly looking over my shoulder, without letting the shadows of my past dictate my every move. I had moved into a new apartment a few weeks after everything ended. It wasn't much, just a cozy little space with high ceilings and lots of natural light, but it was mine. It was a place where I could breathe, where the memories of Xavier and his lies wouldn't follow me in every corner. The first night in the new place, I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by boxes, and just stared out the window at the city skyline. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could see a future, and it didn't involve him. It was a future I was going to build on my own. I spent the next few months rebuilding, reconnecting with friends I had neglected, picking up hobbies I had forgotten, and slowly finding joy in the little things again. I started going to the gym more regularly, not because I felt like I had to, but because it made me feel good. I started reading books again, books I had put off for months, and they reminded me of who I was before everything got messy. I even began making plans with people who didn't have any ties to Xavier, and I realized how much I had been hiding from the world out of fear and shame. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. One afternoon, Dane called me, her voice full of excitement. "So, how's it going? Are you finally getting back into the swing of things?" I smiled, leaning back in my chair, looking out the window of my new place. "Yeah, I am. I mean, it's still a little strange sometimes, but I think I'm finally where I need to be." She paused. "I'm proud of you. You know that? You've come so far. It's not easy, what you went through, but you didn't let it break you, and that's something you should never forget." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in. "Thanks, Deanie. You've been there for me through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you." She laughed softly. "You would have figured it out, but I'm glad I was here, and now it's your turn. You're stronger than you know." I felt something inside me shift, a kind of quiet strength, the kind I hadn't known I had until I had been forced to dig deep. It was a reminder that I wasn't defined by the people who let me down. I was defined by the way I picked myself back up. The next few weeks were a blur of small victories. I got promoted at work. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious, just getting to know people without the weight of the past hanging over me. I even ran into Xavier's friend Josh at a mutual friend's birthday party. I expected the usual awkwardness, the whispers behind my back. But instead, I found a new sense of peace. I didn't need to prove anything to him or to anyone else. And then, one night, as I was unwinding with a glass of wine and my favorite book, I saw something on social media that caught my eye. A picture of Xavier and Ashlyn. They were together, smiling, posted on Ashlyn's feed with a caption that read, "Taking another chance on love." The photo was casual, a moment between two people who seemed so sure of each other. For a second, I felt that familiar pang of sadness, but it didn't linger. I realized, as I stared at the photo, that I didn't feel the bitterness I thought I would. I didn't feel envy or anger. I felt nothing. The chapter with Xavier was closed. The lesson had been learned. And with that realization, I felt a quiet sense of freedom. I had no more questions, no more what-ifs. What mattered now was me, the woman I was becoming, and the life I was building. It wasn't the future I had imagined, not by a long shot, but it was mine, it was real, and it was enough. I learned a lot from everything that happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the lies. But the most important lesson was this: never let someone else's actions define your worth. We all make mistakes, and we all find ourselves tangled in relationships that aren't meant to be. But at the end of it all, you are the one who gets to decide how to move forward. You are the one who holds the power to choose your future, no matter how much the past may try to hold you back. I walked away from that chapter with my head held high, knowing that I deserved better. And in that, I found something more valuable than any apology or promise. I found myself again.